This is for Module 8, Unit 11, an interview on leadership with my principal, Roger Dutcher. Thank you for doing this interview with me.
My pleasure.
All right, let's get started. Question number 1 is, what does it mean to be a teacher leader?
Okay, I think one of the important things is that you have to know teaching and you have to know the teacher. Those are basically the two parts of it. What motivates the teacher? What are his or her strengths?
Right.
The areas for growth? What resources do they need to do their job effectively? And that sort of crosses over into management, because the management is having resources there, but it is still a part of leadership because you have to know where you are going. What is that final result?
Right.
And this happens over time. I mean, you get to know teachers more and more, and that's why it's kind of nice to work with teachers over years, because
That's true.
you kind of get to know them better. But also as a teacher or as a leader, you learn to recognize things sooner, and that just comes with practice.
Yeah, when you're doing it several years, I think you get better and better at recognizing it and becoming a better leader.
Yeah, and a lot of these things, there are things that you learn through training, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. But then when you start to apply them,
Right.
you find out what actually, things don't always work the same way in practice as they do in theory. So
Yes,
Is
this is
that
the
true?
real deal.
Yes.
All right, number 2, what is the process of becoming a teacher leader at our school at ASU?
I think it's probably the same anywhere. The first thing is you get a good sense of where you are first. Then you branch out into your professional learning community. So in your case, you figure out what are your, where are you as a teacher in ESL, and then what can you do to help out your team. You get to know your team and what areas that are lacking. So determine what's working and what needs to be improved.
Okay, that's good, very good. What are the attributes or the knowledge and skill would a teacher need to be a leader at our school, and also just beyond ASU? So as a principal, in general, what kind of skills and attributes are you looking for?
As a leader, I think one of the things you hear all the time with leaders is you have to understand the vision, understand the mission, and because as a leader you are taking people someplace. That's kind of the difference between leaders and managers. Managers, you're organizing people, but as a leader you are taking them towards that vision, so you need to understand that. Also, one of the recent trends in leadership is emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
And you've probably read about that, and I'm doing that in coursework I'm doing right now. It's really big because you have to be able to connect with people.
Is that also related? Like, I have read things about emotional IQs. Is that connected?
It's basically, yeah, because I just read something recently where it said people in top positions and in executive positions, IQ is not as much of an issue because they all have high IQ, otherwise they wouldn't be there. But the ones that distinguish the good leaders from the ones that are not as successful is how they are able to connect. What is their emotional intelligence?
And are there tests that people can take about like where they fall on the grid of emotional intelligence?
There are surveys you can take. If you take leadership courses, you can probably take a number of different surveys, and that's one of them. And really what it is it's kind of a self-assessment. It kind of keys you in on areas where you can improve.
So how could you use something like that in your position here at ASU?
I think it's good because there's things that you don't realize that you are doing or are not doing. So I try to use those. I try to apply them as soon as I recognize them. But again, it takes practice. You really got to organize your time well, and you have to remind yourself, like, even recognizing people for the work that they do. That's important because that it shows that you understand what their job is and what they're putting into it. And it's easy to not do it because you get caught up in what you're doing. And that's, again, kind of a difference between, being a layperson, which was one of your questions,
Right.
and we'll get into that again in just a minute, and being a leader. And that's understanding where everybody else has to be as part of the big picture.
And helping them get there.
Yes.
All right.
You mentioned some other things here too that I wanted to just comment on. Some suggested teachers who are thinking outside of their classrooms, and that's part of it too. As I said, it's not just your one area, which is important. You need to know that,
Yeah.
but it's thinking outside of that too. How does that affect everybody else? and that's why I'm big on collaboration too. People who are not afraid to share what they don't know. We talk a lot about celebrating mistakes. I like that phrase, celebrating mistakes, but the idea is not to focus on the mistakes, but what you learn from them. I've got a sign up here on my board, you know, the quote by Thomas Edison, I've not failed, I've just found 10,000 ways that don't work. And I think that's important. It's we have to look at how can we learn from those mistakes and move on, and so we don't make mistakes again.
That's good, because as teachers, I mean, the reality is we make a lot of mistakes. But
Yeah, and better to learn with the little mistakes before they become bigger mistakes, right?
Yeah, that's good, yeah.
And that's what we teach our students too.
All right. What are the differences between a leader at our school and a layperson? You kind of touched a little bit. I
talked about that a little bit, and a leader is just what the name implies. You are taking people towards a common goal. It is not just within your own your area of expertise. Layperson may be very good at a particular skill. They may be good as part of collaborating with the team, but it's going beyond that and saying, okay, well, what if we did things this way? And really being the idea, having ideas and being able to motivate people to go towards those ideas.
Great. Would it be possible to see the action plan for the results of the accreditation process our school has recently gone through from WASC?
Yes, actually, those documents are not a secret. In fact, the previous visits that we've had, those documents are on our website, on our share drive, not on our school website, but on the share drive. Those are available to anybody.
Okay.
In the process that we're going through right now, that will be made available to everybody because we want to all be part of that process.
Right.
Yeah, it's not just something that the leaders are going to push through, but we want everybody to have ownership in that.
And the reason why I was asking that, just because as a leader, I think it's important that we see what our weaknesses are as a school, and if those of us who are interested in leadership could look at that and just kind of see what our weaknesses are and how can we improve in those areas, personally in my own teaching situation, but also as a leader in the school.
And what's nice about the way that WASC breaks it down, there are a number of different areas that we can improve on. But what they do is they only want 2 or 3, because when you get too many, then you're going in all different directions. And that, as a leader, is something that you have to consider too. It's like, I want to do this. I want to, whenever you come back from a workshop or a conference, you're like, have 100 different ideas.
Right.
And so it's a matter of prioritizing and saying, this is the most important thing. So, absolutely.
Okay. How would you recommend I increase my involvement in the ESL department, ESL team at our school?
I would start by looking at what's been done in the past. Be familiar with the ESL framework, because when you're moving into new territory, you want to know what has worked and what hasn't worked. So do that. Be familiar with as much of the curriculum as you can, not just language arts, but the other subjects too, because as you know, ESL crosses over into all of those. Yeah. And we've done so much better, I think, recently on collaboration and cross-curricular planning. And we can see where, as I said, ESL spills over into pretty much every subject at the school.
Right now I'm pulling out students for math.
Exactly. So we've bridged from language arts to math, and those are all important.
Okay, that's a really good suggestion. Could there be any opportunity for me to do some professional development with teaching staff on how to work with English language learners? And if so, what do you think that could look like?
Well, absolutely, I think there is. In fact, we've talked about this recently. I think it could be any number of things. It's really limited to your imagination. You could do a presentation as part of our during one of our staff meetings.
Great. I'd like to do that.
Collaborate with other teachers one-on-one. You've worked in their classrooms, so you can kind of see where you can go with that. But really, it's just limited to your whatever you come up with, and as long as
I was just
resources.
thinking, since our school is primarily English language learners, it would be helpful if all the teachers had some additional skills or techniques to work with, the general population of their students that are related just to ELLs.
I think that's good, and we've actually talked about that in the past. We sort of got it off the ground a little bit, but we didn't really go as far as we wanted to with it. So I think that would be good. because you can't be with the kids every day for every period, for every class. And so the teachers, some of them have background in this area, but many of them don't. That's not their specialty. So I think taking your expertise in this and sharing it with them would be really beneficial.
Wonderful. It would be good to have that opportunity. What kind of professional development is offered at our school for those wanting to increase in their leadership roles? I actually think that we do have a lot of opportunities.
There are a lot of opportunities. If you want to know more about leaderships, just background on leadership, we do have our online professional development at M8, and I'm sure they've got a lot of videos on that. I actually have a lot of books on leadership, as does our assistant principal, I'm sure, because we've gone through these courses, and I would make them readily available. There's a lot of really good ones on leadership in different aspects of that. So again, there's lots of opportunities.
Could you just give a couple maybe other examples of maybe current opportunities that there are at our school, like, for example, being on committees?
Right. I was going to say...
And how does that link to becoming a good leader?
I can tell you based on experience, being on a committee, especially some of the big committees that we've had, the open house, the International Day, the big events, Sports Day, it's really an opportunity to show your leadership, because you're getting a big group of people together, and you have to be able to find out what each of their talents are and coordinate that. So there's some management in there too. But you've got to keep them motivated too. You can't be the person that just says, well, you're going to do this, you're going to do this. They've got to enjoy this opportunity, and they've got to realize their value as part of this team.
Yeah, that's true.
And it's not as easy as it would seem, because different people have different ideas of what works best, and you've got to kind of bring out the best in every person there.
A little bit like a coach.
A lot like a coach. Yeah, absolutely. And coaching is one form of leadership. With a committee, that's generally what it is. I mean, there are some types of leadership that are a little bit more direct. Most of them that we find in our community here, though, they're a little bit more democratic coaching, and it's really giving people a voice and letting them.
It's kind of like teaching practices.
Yes.
There's the guide, there's the coach.
Exactly, yeah, that all comes into leadership.
Yeah. Almost finished, just a few more questions. What leadership roles do you think will come up in the next year at ASU?
We're a relatively small school, so we don't really have department heads. Although we are looking for someone to have a head of ESL is good, because we want a coordinator that kind of keeps things on track, because there are a lot of moving parts in that. But again, committees, that's leadership positions. That's a good place to start. Again, there's nothing like being a leader on a committee to challenge your...
Yeah, and with as many committees as we have, it is actually a really good opportunity. That's kind of a good starting place, I suppose.
Yeah, and I'm open if there's other suggestions on things that would present a leadership opportunity. I'm open to that, keeping in mind, of course, the size of our school. But, yeah.
Good. All right. Kind of related to that, if I ever wanted to move into more of a leadership role, or let's say an administration role in the future, what steps do you think I should take now and from now to get to that place?
Well, I think you've got a good start, because you're doing the education, and I'm kind of I feel like the formal and the informal. There's a good balance in there. I know some people are strictly, well, a school can't teach you what you can learn in real life. But obviously we are in the education business, so I think there's value in both. So I would say take courses that are specifically designed for leadership. Read about leadership. And networking is huge. Networking is huge, because you talk to people that are in leadership positions. They can tell you some of the things that they've experienced. And probably the ones that are fairly new to leadership, like within a few years, it's still fresh in their mind, some of the things that they've experienced, and so they can share with you what you would be getting into if you're going into leadership. a lot of good things in it, but there's a lot of challenges too.
I didn't think about the networking piece, but I guess.
It's huge, yeah. And that's like when you go to these conferences too, you listen to some great speakers, you see some good presentations, but you also get to compare notes and say, you know, oh, we were having this problem in our school too. How did you deal with that? Because you've got collective experience is always better than, you know, your individual experience. You know, you get to compare notes and you can share what you've learned with them to help them out and vice versa.
I guess that would be what's that term, professional learning network.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and as an
really beneficial.
administrator, being able to have contact and resources with other administrators would probably be really valuable.
It's huge because you've got people in your organization looking to you for answers, and if you have not come across that before, it's difficult. So you can go to people, and that's the whole point, is that you have people that you can go to for that.
I guess as administrator, you also need those that you ask.
Absolutely. You never. I mean, we're lifelong learners, right? Self-directed lifelong learners, and so we have constantly got to be looking at ways that we can improve things, and you can't be afraid to ask for help.
That's good. Yeah. All right. Okay. Thank you for the interview. Thank you for your time today.
You're welcome.